Among the spectacle and plethora of announcements at San Diego Comic-Con, James Gunn and the cast of Guardians of the Galaxy Vol. 3 confirmed some heartbreaking news, that it will be the end of that story in the MCU. Of course, that definitely doesn't mean that it will be the last time fans ever see these characters. While it doesn't seem likely they'd not have the Guardians play a role in Avengers, the Kang Dynasty and Avengers: Secret Wars, fans should prepare to say goodbye to some of their favorites. One of the more probable candidates for that would be Drax the Destroyer, played by Dave Bautista. Though he is a warrior through and through, he's actually one of the funniest characters in the franchise, and these quotes perfectly exemplify why. "Nothing goes over my head. My reflexes are too fast. I would catch it." Guardians of the Galaxy Drax is as literal gets. As explained in Guardians of the Galaxy, his people don't follow idioms, metaphors, or figurative language. This quote is probably one of his most recognized and perfectly showcases how Drax operates and takes everything solely at face value. Drax the Destroyer's been around in the comics since the 1970s, yet before Guardians of the Galaxy he and his fellow teammates were obscure to everyday audiences. However, lines like this are what helped him rise from that obscurity and become a powerhouse of comedy in the franchise. Hopefully, some of the other obscure or underrated characters from the comics can receive a similar treatment in upcoming films or TV shows. "I'm sure I'm invisible." Avengers: Infinity War. Another one of Drax's most beloved quotes comes in Avengers: Infinity War when he supposedly stood completely still watching Star-Lord and Gamora for an hour, wholeheartedly thinking himself completely invisible. Of course, this moment is only made funnier when Mantis comes in and says, "Hi Drax," proving he is indeed not invisible. Unfortunately, he's far from secretive or stealthy and wouldn't do well as a spy like Black Widow or Hawkeye, but that's really what makes Drax so fun to watch. "I like your knife. I'm keeping it." Guardians of the Galaxy Drax is never going to sugarcoat anything he says. He'll be blunt and straight to the point, including when he decides to steal his fellow prisoner's knife. What makes the moment so funny is that he didn't do it with any malintent. He just saw a knife, liked it, took it, and that's all it was to him. Drax's unexpected talent is being able to alleviate tension and bring levity to nearly any situation in the most earnest and honest way possible. That'll be something the MCU will miss should Drax's story end with Guardians of the Galaxy Vol. 3. There are two types of beings in the universe: those who dance, and those who do not. Guardians of the Galaxy Vol. 2 like the best characters in the MCU. Among all the jokes and humor Drax brings to his scenes, he's still never lacking in unique kernels of wisdom. That's the case here in Guardians of the Galaxy Vol. 2 when he gives some romantic advice to Star-Lord who is pinning after Gamora. Of course, Drax does also insult Star-Lord while doing this, bluntly calling him pathetic, but that makes the moment all the better. Interestingly, this is also a brief glimpse at the kind of person Drax's wife was. She wasn't a dancer, not even moving an inch for any music, and for Drax, that's incredibly beautiful. Among the comedy and levity of the moment, there's a touching little tidbit of knowledge, which is then expanded on later in the film. It is good to once again be among friends. Guardians of the Galaxy. The nice thing about Drax's directness is that his allies and enemies never need to doubt his conviction or honesty. That's the case in Guardians of the Galaxy when he shares that his newfound allies are his true friends. Of course, as is with Drax, it does come with an insult at Gamora's expense, though he largely makes up for it when he subsequently hits Nebula with the Hadron Enforcer. This was a pivotal moment for Drax. Ever since his wife and daughter were murdered by Ronan, he was on a mission of revenge and blood. However, upon meeting Star-Lord, Rocket, Groot, and even Gamora in the kiln, he begins to find a new purpose. Whatever the outcome of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, it might be Drax's last time with his friends according to James Gunn. All do you one better. Why is Gamora? Avengers, Infinity War. Honestly, this line might take the cake as the funniest lines in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that's a stacked competition. It's utterly ridiculous and makes absolutely no sense, and Drax means it with every ounce of his being. It's simply a quintessential Drax line. It's also coupled with his claims that he could survive Iron Man's laser pointing directly at his face, showing his overconfidence and complete lack of awareness. The fun thing about this was the iconic line was initially improvised in one take and it worked so well it made the final cut. The beast's hide is too thick to be pierced from the outside. I must cut through it from the inside. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Since Drax often sees the world for simply how it looks and does not think deeply about things, he is incredibly impulsive and blind to reality. This obviously happened in Guardians of the Galaxy when he drunkenly signaled to bring Ronan to nowhere to fight, and even more so when he decided to jump directly into the interdimensional beast he and the Guardians fought at the beginning of the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Gamora and Star-Lord naturally understood that the beast's skin would be just as impenetrable from the inside as the outside, so his actions didn't help in any way. Nevertheless, when Gamora was able to cut through a weak spot, thus freeing Drax, he truly believed he had felled the beast. When you're ugly and someone loves you, you know they love you for who you are. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. His wisest moment came in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 when he was talking with Mantis about his notion of love. It is the best look at the softer, more vulnerable side of Drax as he remembers his young, innocent daughter, while still doing it in the Drax way by calling Mantis horrible to look at, but in a good way. Interestingly, in the comics, Drax is actually connected with a character named Heather Douglas aka Moondragon, a telekinetic hero who could show up in the upcoming holiday special. Heather's father was killed by Thanos and his soul was eventually bound to another body, Drax's. This might be a bit complicated and confusing to translate to the MCU, which is what might hold back Moondragon's inclusion. What if someone does something irksome, and I decide to remove his spine? Guardians of the Galaxy. As part of his culture, Drax has a different relationship to violence and bloodshed than characters like Star-Lord or the Nova Corps of Xandar. Fighting seems to be a second language for him and thus his first instinct is to solve nearly any problem with it. Like always, he doesn't mean anything else from what he is asking here at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy. He is just earnestly asking if he would be allowed to do this. Of course, it is murder and therefore illegal. Thankfully for his and probably the galaxy's sake, Drax is now part of this ragtag crew who are somehow capable of curbing his most heinous impulses. I have sensitive nipples. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. As it is not in his nature to be dishonest or second-guess anything he says, Drax doesn't feel any shame. His only true moment of embarrassment came when after he was nearly killed by Ronan on Nowhere, noting how his overconfidence blinded him and put others in harm. Beyond that, he is perfectly proud to claim his sensitive nipples or famously huge turds, as he exclaims throughout Guardians of the Galaxy Vol. 2. During the battle against the interdimensional monster, when he didn't want to wear Rocket's arrow rigs, he chose to prioritize his nipples over his general safety. There's even a callback at the film's climax when he is trying to escape with a knocked-out Mantis, an arrow rig latches on, and as he flies away, he hilariously shouts, "My nipples!"